The Severity Thresholds webinar will cover what severity thresholds are, how to create and manage them at the organization and event level, and how you can use them when reviewing and assessing event data. We'll start by going over what severity thresholds are. Severity thresholds are the ranges that determine the colorization of a data point on the event map and the severity level name. Thresholds can be saved and managed at the organization level, so they can quickly be copied over to an event. They can also be modified and created ad hoc at the event level. Severity thresholds apply to the accumulated dose, chemical ID, chemical reading, field survey, mobile reading, fixed point survey, and fixed chemical reading data types. Collected data that meets the criteria of its corresponding threshold set will be assigned a severity based on the range it falls in. So for this here, we have the radiation type of alpha, the unit as counts per minute, and these are the ranges for background low, medium, high, and very high. For example, if 0.98 CPM is recorded by a data collector, it's going to fall in the background threshold range. If a reading was taken at 54.1 counts per minute, it would fall in the high range because it is greater than 6 but less than 61. 2.7, this would fall in the low range. And lastly, 100 CPM would fall in the very high range because it is greater than 61. We'll start by going over how to manage severity thresholds at the event level, and then later we'll discuss how to manage them at the organization level. To create and edit thresholds at the event level, users need to have the event manager role. If you have that role, you'll need to open up your event, expand the configuration menu, and select thresholds to be brought to the thresholds page. You can only have one default threshold set per data type applied to your event. You can edit the severity thresholds for a data point that already has defined thresholds or the pre-existing ones, or you can add a new threshold set to the event. To edit a threshold set, you'll click that blue magnifying glass next to the name of the set. And now you're brought to the threshold set details page. If you click edit, you'll be able to manage the general information and the ranges and labels of the threshold set. This is the general information section, and you can choose to change the name of the set and add a description if you'd like. You'll need to determine if the set is the default set, meaning that this set will be the one used to calculate severity on this event only for the respective data type. And the labels, you can change the background low, medium, high, and very high label names to meet your operating procedures. So for example, here I changed the very high label to turn back limit. Once you edit the general information section, you can now edit the ranges, and the parameters for the different thresholds will depend on the data type. You'll notice that when you are editing, there is no very high range that you can edit. And this is because when you are defining the ranges, you are editing the upper limits of the range. So here, background, the upper limit is 1.5, meaning that any reading that falls between 0 and 1.5 CPM will be background. Same for low, anything greater than 1.5 to 3. For medium, anything greater than 3 to 6. And for high, anything greater than 6 to 61. And very high is then going to be anything that is greater than 61. So the very high range is anything greater than that high upper limit. For radiological data types, if you edit the thresholds for one order of magnitude, the other orders of magnitude with the same radiation type will also update. So for example here, if you edit the alpha counts per minute, CBRNResponder will automatically update the ranges for alpha counts per second. When you're editing your thresholds, you can choose to remove one or add a threshold set as well. Now I'm clicking remove for the gross MR, and note that if you do have a reading on your event that is measured as the gross measurement type in the measurement unit of MR, CBRNResponder will be unable to calculate the severity of the reading since it is not defined and therefore will not have a color. If you choose to add a threshold, the criteria will depend on the data type. So if my event is both RAD and Chem enabled and I click add threshold and I choose the chemical reading, I'm going to select my sensors, whereas if I'm choosing a field survey, I'm going to select my measurement type and measurement unit. When you are done editing your set, you'll just click Save Changes at the top. You'll then be prompted with a warning message letting you know that the severity for all affected data points will be recalculated if this threshold set is marked as default. If you edit a threshold set, you can undo your changes at any time to go back to the original ranges. In the details page of the threshold set at the top, instead of clicking edit, you will now click reset to source. You'll receive a message confirming this is what you would like to do. If you click yes, all changes you previously made to the default threshold set will be undone and it will go back to its original state. You also have the ability to add a new threshold set instead of editing an existing one. You'll click Add Threshold Set in the upper right-hand corner. And again, please note you will only be able to do this if you have the Event Manager role. You'll be prompted with a few questions. First, you'll be asked to select the data point type that you want to add a threshold set for. And these options will be dependent on the event type, whether it's RAD or Chem or both. And you also will need to select whether this will be the default set for the respective data type on the event. Once you select those, you'll also see an option asking if you wanted to show all organization threshold sets. And what this means is if you check it, all organization threshold sets will be available instead of only the threshold sets for the scenario corresponding with the current event. You'll select your source threshold set, so this will be the basis of your new set. And then you'll enter a name for what you want this set to be called. You can see here I use the default field survey thresholds organization threshold set as my source, and I named it thresholds and the date. I'll click save, and now you can see on the right-hand side the thresholds April 28th, 2021 set is available. You'll also note that it is not marked as default. So even though I created a new threshold set for the field survey data point type, since it's not default, the default field survey thresholds CB Tech will be the one that the field surveys are using to calculate their severity. If you open up the details, you can edit, change, or modify the source threshold that you selected. You'll follow the same steps for editing this threshold set if you wanted to adjust any of the upper limits. Remember that the threshold set has to be set to default in order for it to apply to your event data. So we talked a little bit about managing, creating, and editing severity thresholds at the event level, and now we're going to discuss managing them at the organization level. To edit or create thresholds at the organization level, users must have either the administrator or planner role. You'll select and open the organization space for which you wish to manage the threshold sets for. You'll click Thresholds on the left-hand navigation menu, and you'll be brought to the threshold sets page for your organization. This list is going to show you all sets created at the organization level, and it will also give you the ability to create a new threshold set. To create a new set, I'm going to click Create Threshold Set at the upper right-hand corner, and I'm now brought to a form that's going to look pretty similar to the one at the event level. You'll enter a unique name for the set. You can add a description if you'd like. You'll select the data point type for this threshold set, and this will be dependent on whether your organization is a RAD, Chem, or both organization. You can select an event scenario, which will enable you to activate different thresholds for different types of events. You can also select if this is going to be the default set for the corresponding data type for all events with the same scenario. And you also have the ability to rename the labels for the background, low, medium, high, and very high ranges. If you do choose to select default for your new set, you will receive a warning message letting you know that when you save this new set, the conflicting set will no longer be the default one. Unlike adding a new threshold set at the event level where you selected a source threshold set and then could edit it, when you add a new threshold set at the organization level, you are starting from scratch and will have to add each threshold individually. Again, depending on the data type, the thresholds will look a little different. This one here is for field surveys, and thresholds are added by radiation type and unit. This is a chemical reading, and thresholds are added by sensor type. For some chem data types, you have the option to use an inverted scale, and this means that as the severity increases, the value decreases. So this is an option that you have for some of those chem data types. If you want more information on what that means, you will see this green question mark. If you hover over that, it will provide you with more information. The upper limits will be blank for each range, and you need to fill them in. Again, very similar to the event level. And also note that there is no very high upper limit. For radiological survey thresholds, you can choose to only define one upper threshold for one of the units, and CBRNResponder will convert the other orders of magnitude for the same radiation type. So you can see here that I entered the gamma milliar per hour as 5, and then CBRNResponder converted the R per hour and micro R per hour. After you've added all your threshold sets, click Save Changes to add the set to your organization. Now, another option for creating a new threshold set is instead of creating a new one from scratch, you can open up the details of a threshold set that you want to use as a basis for a new set. You'll click Copy in the upper corner, and this will create an exact copy of the threshold parameters, and we'll have a copy of in front of the name. So you can see here, the original one was NREP 2019 threshold. I created a copy, and now the name of it is copy of NREP 2019 threshold. You can then edit the copy to fit your needs instead of starting from scratch. Editing an existing threshold set at the organization level works very similarly to the way it does at the event level. So you'll open up the details, click edit, and then save any changes. The only difference is when you do save changes, you need to determine which events, if any, are affected by the changes you make. When you click Save Changes, you'll be brought with this modal, and here it will have you select which options you want. So the first option says refresh active events using this threshold set. If this box is checked, this means that events that have this threshold set enabled, where it was not edited at the event level, but it was edited here at my organization level, it will recalculate and refresh existing data points for all active events that are currently using this threshold set. If I select refresh active events using a customized version of this threshold set, this means that events that have this threshold set enabled, but it was edited at the event level before being edited at the org level, will refresh and recalculate the existing data points for all active events using the org level threshold set, therefore overriding the custom edit that you made at the event level. If you choose not to select any of these options, your new set will save at the organization level without affecting any of your pre-existing events data. So now that we've discussed how to create and manage and edit threshold sets at both the organization and event level, we'll now discuss the importance of defining severity thresholds and how you can use them to review and assess your event data. The purpose of creating and editing threshold sets at the organization and event level is so when you are viewing event data, either via the event map or the data tables, you are able to sort by, filter by, and visually see your data and their corresponding severity level for greater situational awareness and decision making. If I open up the data tables of a particular data type on my event, I can choose the column of severity level to show in my tables. So if I enable it, which you can see on the left-hand side, I now have a column for the corresponding severity level with each reading. I can sort that column by severity level by clicking the up and down arrows. So in the middle screenshot, this is ascending, so low to high. If I click it again, it will be in descending order, so very high to background or high to low. In the data tables, you can also choose to filter by severity level. So here I am selecting to only show data that is medium or high. And I can see here, if I look at the bottom, that it is showing 161 entries out of 930. So 161 data points are either the medium or high severity level. Via the event map, I can geospatially see all my data, and if they have a corresponding threshold set, each data point will be colorized, and the colorization represents the severity level of those data points. If there's a cluster of data, meaning that there are several data points close together, depending on your zoom level, then the cluster color will be the color of the highest severity level in that data grouping. So here in this example, we have a cluster of 4, and in that cluster, we have 1 low reading, which is the green one, 2 medium readings, which are the yellow ones, and 1 high reading, which is the orange one. Therefore, this cluster will then be represented as orange, since high is the highest severity level in this grouping. Similarly to the data tables, I can choose to filter my map by severity level for each data type. So I'll expand my filter section, go to advanced filters, and then under my data type, I will select the severity level I want to see on the map. And so here you can see I'm only seeing red and orange, which are the very high and high severity level readings. It is possible on both the data tables and event map that the data collected does not fall within any threshold range or type. It will then be classified as unable to calculate and will show up as a gray icon on the event map and as the unable to calculate gray wording under severity level in the data tables. Here's an example as to why a data point does not have a threshold set. So the alpha reading of 10 microR per hour is what the data collector entered as a field survey. It says unable to calculate, so I am going to open up the threshold set for my field surveys. So you can see here, I am navigating to my event thresholds page and I'm opening the details for default field survey thresholds. I'll filter my thresholds by alpha radiation type, and I will see that there is no microR per hour unit for alpha readings defined for field surveys, and therefore that's why that reading is unable to calculate the severity threshold. A reading could also be gray if it is pending calculations, and this could appear if you just entered the reading or if you modified the threshold set and the reading needs to be recalculated. If your severity level is pending, you'll also see a pending circle letting you know that it's working on assigning a severity level to this reading. On the mobile app and the website, when users are entering data, they can manually enable the background option when collecting data. Now, this does not override the severity threshold that corresponds to the data point that they entered. On the data tables here, you can see that severity level is a separate column from background. Severity level is determined based on the set thresholds, and background is defined by the user at the time of data collection. You can see here that severity level was classified as background, even though the user did not select it as background. Same for the next reading. The severity level is background, however, the user did not check the is background option. The severity level here is background, and the user selected yes as being background. And lastly, the severity level is medium, but the user selected yes as background. While the background option defined by the user does not override the severity level, it can be used to further evaluate background readings in an area and jurisdiction to inform those threshold sets if you do need to edit them to better fit the needs of your area. The slides from today's webinar, as well as the recording, will be available in the CBRNResponder resource library and on YouTube. We also have job aids on managing severity thresholds in the resource library that you can download. If you have any questions on severity thresholds or anything CBRNResponder related, you can email us at support@cburnresponder.net. You can also visit our resource library for job aids, user guides, videos, and a copy of the slide deck.